Today we will be discussing the topic of deaf schools versus mainstream schools, and we are arguing for the side of deaf children going to deaf schools. Deaf schools are superior to mainstream schools for deaf children because they cultivate a better educational environment immersed within their culture and can maintain social skills.
The National Association of the Deaf, students develop abilities imperative to their attributes and quality of life. Deaf schools allow for the students to feel a sense of belonging. Quote, they provide extracurricular activities, leadership opportunities, and mentoring by successful deaf and hard of hearing adult role and language models, end quote. Allowing the kids to feel seen in school also allows for a self-esteem boost.
Along with the educational aspect, there is a cultural aspect. When enrolled in deaf schools, students are immersed into deaf culture. They learn about how to communicate with other people in the same culture and can build on their community. The Gallaudet website said that, quote, today, Gallaudet is the go-to source on the deaf and signing community, a rich source of history, knowledge, achievement, and inspiration, end quote. This has a major impact on children's experiences when it comes to their community and their culture.
Another benefit of deaf students going to deaf schools is the ability for them to learn with peers and teachers that share the same language. A good example is Josh Salisbury's experience in a hearing university, where he recalls a time when the professor asked, quote, "Why didn't you answer my question?" end quote, asked the lecturer, with a smile to say he'd caught him out napping. I hadn't even realized he asked a question. I awkwardly began to explain that I wasn't being lazy. Quote, "I didn't hear what you asked me," end quote, I said apologetically. "I'm deaf." Being called out by your teacher would embarrass anyone, especially if you can't control what you're being called out for.
The ultimate goal for a teacher is to foster an environment of success. If a major obstacle is put in the way, it makes not only the teacher, but the students as well feel discouraged and are less inclined to want to learn when challenges arise. For example, Janelle Cox writes, quote, classroom setup is an important component in a learning environment because it is an essential piece of classroom management to support both teaching and learning, end quote. All in all, cultivating an environment that is conducive to the students and teachers to have the best environment to become successful in is important.
However, there are others who would disagree with our argument. They would say that the mainstream schools are more accessible and more common to find. They may also say it is important to socialize with both hearing and deaf peers. They may not be challenged in deaf schools, and if they are in deaf schools, they receive limited access to the hearing world along with many other reasons. Mainstream schools can offer multiple options that can benefit deaf students. However, deaf schools would be better communication-wise. They would be involved in the community. There is more of an individualized approach to educating since the classes are smaller, and it is better visually for the deaf students in deaf schools. Overall, deaf schools can be better for deaf students than mainstream schools.